These guys from a podcast called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty want to talk to you. And I think and I said, you don't have to tell me what it's about. I said, if it's called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, you definitely don't need to tell me what it's about. And I'm going on. This is what I want to do.
It's a Seinfeld podcast. It's called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty. But I thought, this is what a podcast should be.
I just did the Seinfeld guys pod the other day. It came up.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Oh,
that one. Shout out. We've done it. I've done it. Have you did it?
I've not gotten a chance to do it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
It's so fun. They're so fun.
When I don't know, it must have shown up in my feed, but I see these guys tweeting about Seinfeld. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I find it's a podcast called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty.
One of the most popular Seinfeld podcasts is This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, co-hosted by Chris O'Hara and Tony Chulo.
Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the #1 destination for Seinfeld fans. Today's guest is an actress, director, screenwriter, author, and photographer. She has earned numerous awards on both stage and screen. You know her from Matlock, Beggars and Choosers, Quantum Leap, Beauty and the Beast, 6 Feet Under, and of course, she played Jerry's physical therapist in the season 3 Seinfeld episode, The Note. Please welcome Terri Hanauer. Terri, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, really? It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me. It's great. It's great.
Such a treat, Terri. Obviously, Seinfeld, one of the greatest shows of all time, and there's certain episodes that people always remember, and your episode is one of them. So take us back. The Note, that aired in September of 91.
Wow.
A few years ago. It was the premiere of season 3, which for our money, possibly the best season of the run, in our opinion. So 21.5 million people watched it that night. Incredible stuff. But listen, you were, as Tony reeled off, incredible resume even up until that point. But tell us a little bit how the role came about. Was there an audition process? Would love to get some background there.
Absolutely. I was auditioning for, lots of things at that time. And it wasn't the show that it turned out it became. You know what I mean? Nobody quite knew that it was going to be so great. So it was just another audition for me for a sitcom. And in those days, you have your sides, right? And so I would go over my sides. I was happy with the part. And I was blotting my lips, right? I didn't have tissue in the car. So I used the back of the sides, right? So like this, to blot my lips. So when I went into the audition, and they were all guys there, of course, and Jerry was there and Larry David. And after I did the scene, Jerry said, "You really love the part, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I really think it's a great part." He goes, "No, you were really great, but you really love it, right?" I go, "I do. I really do love it." He goes, "Well, I can tell." I said, "You can? How?" He goes, "Because you kissed the sides." Because my blotted lips were on the back of the sides, right? So as I was reading them and doing the audition, they were looking at my lips. So I think that probably actually got me the part.
Wow.
Because, you never know really what gets you the part. Little things here and there. And I think that was, like the girl with the lips. So
yeah, maybe it stuck and it was noticeable. Yeah, exactly. It helped you stick out. That's great. We love hearing stories like that. And so as we were talking before we kind of kicked off here, it's an historical show in the context of Seinfeld, in that it's the first episode of season 3, which is really their first full episode, as you alluded to. It wasn't really the big hit yet. That quite probably didn't happen until later on in season 3, but this was the first episode. In fact, you were in the first scene of that season.
Right.
So perhaps you could take us through, after, as you mentioned, you got the part through Jerry there, and then you're on set. Take us through that kind of initial. Was it palpable that they had just got picked up for this new season 3, this full season? Could you tell on the set? Was there any talk about that, Larry David, or anything like that, where it was like, you noticed it?
Yeah, there was this very focused excitement. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they were really, really very present with everything. And I remember it was the first day when, during the read through and stuff. And this guy comes on. It was Larry David. I didn't quite know who he was at the time. And he comes on, and that doesn't come on. He comes onto the set, right? And he goes, oh, my neck, my neck. And then Jerry says, this is not in the script. This is like just communicating, right? And Jerry goes, what's the matter? He goes, wow, I was in the valley and I went and I had a massage and I'm driving up Laurel Canyon and I'm right at Mulholland and it's a red light, turns green. Somebody behind me honks and my neck went out. And then he's just talking about his neck. And I thought, who is this guy who's like talking about his neck, like this little thing, massage and all that. And then afterwards, I realized, and of course, with Larry David's show, and also when you think about Seinfeld in my particular episode, it's the little things, it's the little things that make a huge deal in their lives. And that was just such a perfect example. There was Larry David talking seriously about his neck and the crick in his neck. So I thought it was funny.
That is funny. And I'm glad you picked up on that, the minutia, right? And
right.
That's why the show is what it is, because all the stories were true and they were experiences from Larry, Jerry, and the rest of the writers. So yes, and it was a homemade show at that point. I think it always was, but yeah, what did you pick up? Because you were in Cheers, you did Family Ties, like kind of those well-established sitcoms, if you will, right?
Yeah.
With and then you come here, and it's Larry and Jerry, pretty much two guys who have no experience in sitcoms, and
right.
still kind of getting their feet wet. So yeah, tell us a little bit, how different was the Seinfeld set versus a lot of these others, like Cheers, for instance, that you were a part of?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Those other shows, I think when I was on them, had been going for a while. So they were kind of really well-oiled machines, in a certain way. Very lovely sets. Everybody, like Ted Danson, was just great. They were great. That particular set was a little, even though I said it was focused, there was kind of a relaxed feeling in a way. And Michael Richards was so great. I was sitting there just waiting and hanging out. And he came up to me and he said, hey, how are you? And who are you? And great to have you on the show. And that should be like, for every show that should happen, right? But that particular show had that kind of camaraderie in a certain way. And Jerry also, what was interesting is, back to the episode, the little boy that played my son in that, Billy Run, is Jerry's nephew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joshua.
Okay,
legally, right? Yeah.
You know more. You know his name. I don't remember it.
I wonder how he got the role.
Yeah, we're wondering about that.
Really. His sister, Jerry's sister, was there, and it just felt very family. Like not in a nepotism kind of way. I mean, that word didn't really become popular until like in the last 3-4 years anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously he's a kid. It's not like the little boy wanted to be an actor, but there was that feeling of participation. Everybody's kind of involved in it. And Jason's really funny and kind. They all were. I mean, it was relaxed but focused, if that makes sense, even though they seem to be opposite.
It does. And it sounds like they don't put on any airs either, which is what we've heard from other guest stars. It was very laid back, like you mentioned, and relaxed. Yes. And then welcoming was a big part of it, it sounds like. And to that note, I mean, we obviously did a little bit of research before talking to you as well. And, Jeff Lester, who played Raymond, was also in an episode of Matlock with you prior to Seinfeld. And
I can't believe that you know that. I was going to actually mention that. Have you had Jeff on the show?
No, not yet. No. But I would love to hear how that felt. We must have been excited to see him on the set, right, when you got there, or if you knew.
Well, we were friends. I knew his girlfriend at the time, and we were, actors in LA trying to make it. And we were in support groups together. Jeff is a great guy. I haven't seen him in a long time, which is a shame, which maybe now after this, I will reach out to him. He ended up marrying Susan Anton, actually, which you probably know. You probably know more than anybody about all this stuff. And in Matlock, yeah, that's right. We went there. It was kind of like a paid vacation. We were there for about 2 weeks, Manio, North Carolina, where Andy Griffith actually lived. So it felt like family, which is kind of what you try to establish if you're creating the situation, or if you're in a situation, you hope that they're establishing it for you. And having Jeff there was like having a, tall, gorgeous brother.
Yeah, we figured that might have been a package deal from the Matlock episode, but
That's
well, it's
right.
funny. I mean, that era, Mark Hirschfeld, he pulled a lot of actors and actresses from Matlock, Murder, She Wrote, etc. So it's always fun to catch up on all those old episodes. But love Matlock, yeah, the North Carolina thing, the whole thing. So, and just back to the audition. So, like I said, you were with Sam Malone, Cheers, and then what did your agent tell you about Seinfeld? Because it's still early stages, and I'm just curious from your perspective. You probably thought you knew of Jerry probably as a comedian, but walking in that room, like you said, it was all men. Was there any, I don't know, nervousness or intimidation in that sense, or it sounds like they just made you feel really welcome right away?
Absolutely. I was used to going into rooms with all men. I mean, that was just the way it was. And so you just kind of get used to the fact that they're looking at you with many eyes, like in terms of male, female, they're looking at you also writer, actor. Can I satisfy their needs? It was interesting. You're walking into a room with the person who's also in it, not just being the writer, but also in it. Then there's that level, and I'd heard this from some other thing that I did. I'm actually touching his body. I'm touching Jerry's body. I'm massaging his body. And so is he going to be comfortable with me touching his body on some level? It's just it wasn't like an intimacy, coordinator, anything like that back then, but he needed to feel comfortable with me. And that for me wasn't a problem. I would, because I was, as an actor, you just kind of say yes, as long as it's, behind that line. But I think if I had known what the show was going to become, I may have been more nervous, but I wasn't that nervous. I really just took it seriously in terms of what my character would be and do in that situation with a half-naked man.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, because like you said, it hadn't quite taken off yet, so that maybe that relieved some of that stress. No pun intended with the massage stuff, but yeah,
Right.
no, it's interesting that you're that scene's with Jerry alone, right? Like you mentioned, the massage, and then later on when he comes back, he's with Jason. And I know you touched on Michael Richards being welcoming, and I know you were in at least one scene with Jason, but I'm sure you're around him on set too. What was your interactions like with Jason Alexander? I mean, had you known him prior to Seinfeld?
I hadn't. I now know him, but I hadn't then. I'm trying to remember my interaction with him. I don't remember him that much on the set. I mean, he had a lot of lines and stuff, so I don't quite remember. Or he may have been more kind of with Jerry doing that stuff, and Julia Louise, who I also don't remember that much connecting with. Like I said, they were busy doing their things, but they were kind to me. But Michael, on his own, came over and sat down and started talking, which is a lovely thing. There was something that I wanted to tell you. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. You may be going in this direction, but this is really interesting. The Run, Billy, Run, like that moment, the last scene that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
While we were rehearsing, there's a little bit of rehearsal, and then you do it. And as you know, it's like we did 2 shows that evening, and then they cut from that. They edit from that. So while we're rehearsing, I said to Jerry, I have a son who's around the same age as this little boy. If I were in this situation, I would first say his name. I would say Billy to get his attention, and then run, run. And then Jerry said, right, but Billy, run, run isn't funny. Run, Billy, run is funny. And I said,
wow.
Yeah, right. And that was that. Like the ear that he had, and has, all of them actually, there's a sense of what's funny and what's not, which I'm sure you guys are funny because you connect with the show in such a way, right? That you enjoy and you get and some people are just funny.
Right. Yeah. And as soon as you said it, it made total sense too. He's right, in a way, right? You can hear it. It's just one of those things. And they definitely nitpicked every single word that was said, especially early on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because you have to, I think when you watch shows and I like the bear, I like the bear's great. There's some moments when you feel they're improvising and, it's kind of goes on too long in a certain way. You never quite feel that with Seinfeld. You felt the mastery of their writing, their comedic background and understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge difference between Curb and Seinfeld too.
Yes.
In my opinion, it's kind of why I like Seinfeld better, because when you're improvising, you can miss. Like you just mentioned, it can go on too long, or you don't say the right thing. But once you write it, you're writing it perfectly, word for word, and it could hit more. So that's a real, it's a good observation.
Also, actors aren't necessarily writers. Like a writer's a writer, you have an actor, and sometimes we think we're writers, but you go on too long normally. And then, it's like in real life, we go on too long too sometimes. If, like this scene right now that we're doing, if somebody were writing us, it would be shorter, right? Because we're improvising as we go. But I think the writer you have to make the scene interesting and just the right length, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what made this show so special was the writing. And not only that, the casting and obviously the guest star casting. We've talked with Hirschfeld. I think what separates Seinfeld from any other show is the memories of the guest stars. Like, I mean, you sound exactly the same as you look exactly the same as you did that. It's unbelievable. And that image and that sound is like forever in our hearts and our mind. And you mentioned Raymond as well. Like you go through some of these other shows, you talk about a lot, like you were on Cheers, Family Ties. I wouldn't remember who you were on those. Like Seinfeld was just, it cast people so perfectly. Even if you were just on an episode once, right? You're kind of forever ingrained. So so this is season 3, 91, like I said, didn't go to Thursday yet. So after that show aired, I know it's 21 million people, still a huge amount. We don't get those ratings today at all. But back then it was, those are okay numbers, right? But did you feel the impact of that right away? Or like was more recognizable? Like
the impact, it just kept on rolling. As you mentioned earlier on, I was a photographer also at that time. And so maybe about 3 years after that, I was photographing somebody and the guy was looking at me, obviously, through the camera. And he goes, "You are so familiar to me. You are so familiar to me." I said, I'm also an actor. And he goes, "No, and he goes, "Seinfeld." He starts reciting my lines. He knew the whole episode by heart. And at that moment, he kind of became me, as I was looking through the camera. Another example, I was dating my second husband at the time, to-be second husband, and his son came in and with a friend, and he said, "Oh, that's my dad, and that's Terri. She was on Seinfeld." Right? So it's like it became like everybody kind of, "You were on Seinfeld. You were on Seinfeld." It was very exciting. It was fun for me, but they were so excited that I was on Seinfeld because it was their favorite show. It was everybody's favorite show.
Yeah, exactly. To Chris's point, I mean, this is why we're still doing this podcast, right? I mean, it lives on, and I'm sure, and really to that point too, like, you had, like we mentioned, your career had already had so much going on before Seinfeld. Then after Seinfeld, I know you went into directing as well, and like, I like to ask this question a lot because I feel like, and it sounds like you already touched on it a bit, but maybe is there anything you picked up from your experience on Seinfeld, whether it was how Larry worked or Jerry worked or even Tom Sharonis, that you took with you to other endeavors as you moved on in your career and went on to other things as far as writing and even directing? Yeah,
absolutely. Tom was so clear and so present, and I didn't feel, I mean, you feel nervous, of course, before you go on in front of an audience because you're doing theater, which I love to do anyway, but still, I mean, it's the real thing and you've got these cameras and you're doing the show. But I never felt from Tom that I wasn't anything but perfect for the part. You know what I mean? Like he just gave me enough and he kind of let me go. And I felt that was similar, though I don't remember a lot of I think that they had a lot of conversations before the show actually started, before the actual filming of it. The seriousness and at the same time pleasure that everybody that was working on the show had. You know, nobody was a jerk. Nobody was a prima donna. Nobody. Everybody was doing their thing. And then everybody who came onto the show was so happy to be on the show because of that, the environment that was created. And yes, I try to bring that wherever I go, like a respect for the person, you know?
That's great to hear. And obviously paying it forward. And it sounds like you felt that from Jerry to Michael Richards to everyone on set. And you've done a variety, like you've done comedy, drama. I mean, is there I mean, I could feel you're pretty funny too. Obviously growing up in Canada. Yes. How's it grow up from Toronto, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, geez, the comedy legends from there, forget about it. But
that's true.
Yeah. How did a girl from Toronto end up on the set of Seinfeld? I mean, tell us a little bit about your kind of early path there.
I went to York University in Toronto, and at that point, and I mean this in the most positive way, Canada's fabulous and great, and everybody, of course, wants to live there now. You could only go so high up, you know. It was like I call it, instead of the glass ceiling, it was like the ice ceiling. It was like you couldn't. Like I had auditions for Native American Indians, or Native Canadian Indians. So like, it was like, they didn't quite know what to do with me, which to me felt odd, but that's what it was. And I thought, I need to leave. So I got a Canada Council grant to come to the States to learn film acting. Cause at that point there wasn't anything really like that there. And I started and I worked in restaurants and I got into an acting class, Joan Darling's acting class. And I'm pretty entrepreneurial. Like I am intentional. I try to move things forward. So in that class, there were some great scenes. So I started producing scenes for all of the actors that casting people would come to for lunch or for an evening performance. We provided food. They came and they saw us work. And that's how I got my first agent, Erica Wayne. And I believe I was with Erica when I auditioned for Seinfeld. If not, I was with Writers and Artists. I don't quite remember, but yeah, I just kept on moving because that's where I wanted to be here, and I wanted to do what I love to do.
Nice.
Not easy. And I married for love a wonderful man, a photographer, and that's how I got my papers, which were not easy to get if you don't have a way in. Becoming legal here is not easy, but I did. I got my papers, my green card, and I just continued to, work.
And the rest is history, huh?
The rest is history.
Yeah, I mean that run, just kind of looking through your resume, call it like 1989 to 94. I mean,
yeah,
boy, were you busy, from Matlock to Baywatch to what was that? The movie you did with Philip Baker Hall, one of our friend of the show, not friend of the show, friend of Seinfeld, of course.
Great
Bookman.
Guy, wasn't he great?
Oh.
And he was the nicest man. He, I think I did a couple of things with him, and he was just this guy with this great heart and voice. And I remember speaking with him, he was just, we hung out. He was just a wonderful human being, actually. And also he was a favorite of Paul Thomas Anderson, right?
Yeah,
he was
in
a
lot of Paul
movies.
Thomas Anderson's, yeah.
Yeah, he was a great character actor, just a truly a really lovely man.
Yeah, and it sounds like just from that and that was, I think, even like you're in beginning of season 3, as we talked about, which was very early in the show's history. after your episode, did you follow Seinfeld then throughout its kind of, getting big part? Were you a fan of it at all? Or you kind of, that your TV wasn't really your thing at that point?
It's funny. I didn't now. I mean, I've seen everything now, of course.
Right.
But no, I didn't watch a lot of TV then. I was, raising a son, and I was just doing theater and at night and, classes and stuff. So I didn't really follow it as much as everybody else did.
But the Note has to be your favorite episode, we imagine, right?
The Note is my favorite episode.
and we love to ask this. Your son, is he a fan of the show now that it's on like Netflix and it's been kind of out there? Does he pick up on it at all? Does he watch it?
He does pick up on it. He does. I also did a horror movie called Rabid that David Cronenberg directed early on in Canada. And at one point he had, and I am the poster, which if you look at the poster, it's my character is she's killed by Marilyn Chambers. That's a whole other story. And they end up finding me frozen in a freezer, right? Like she drowns me in a whirlpool after frantically whatever in the whirlpool. And then she hides me in a freezer, and you open up the freezer and I'm stuck there. I'm blue, frozen. Took 4 hours of blowing dry salt particles on my body. That is the poster. So my son, at one point when he was in college, he had my poster on his phone. So so he would that's my mom, everybody. Yeah. Seinfeld, he likes Seinfeld a lot, but I think he got a lot of mileage out of the Rabid poster.
That's funny.
Have you seen Rabid? Have you seen it? That's also a classic in a whole different way.
Yeah, of course. And it's, your career, it's been great. And obviously I know you're doing a lot of theater, and our audience, they could probably use some tips from you. Your book, The Party,
I have it right here.
A lot of these knuckleheads at home, they're just watching Seinfeld 24/7. I think they could use some tips. What do you suggest?
Oh, you mean in terms of finding love?
Yes.
Yeah.
Help our audience out.
You guys are so great. You actually do your research and you know all this stuff. It's I'm so impressed by you both, really. Tips. Okay, so I wrote this because so many people were saying, especially during the pandemic, that they were lonely. And in between my marriages, I threw these parties, and they were very intentional, as I mentioned before, parties where you really have a party, and you really, in order to meet somebody, you set it up so that you can all have fun. So there's a corner where you can play certain games. I hired a salsa teacher for the people who wanted to be out in the backyard and learn how to dance salsa, and little area that was questions, funny, interesting questions that you would ask somebody that you didn't know, and then a conversation would ensue. So my tip is to get the book, because it's a good book and it's fun and it's funny and it's heartfelt, and to throw a party, because people are so tired of apps and internet stuff, and actually be face to face with somebody and bring somebody else that wants the same thing as you do, and then that person brings someone else that wants the same thing, so that you expand out and you bring, and then therefore the people that show up are a lot of people that the main people don't know, so that you're actually meeting new people who want the same thing as you if you want to fall in love.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, especially in this day and age, like you said, to actually get FaceTime, actually talk to people. It's a big thing. And I think it's more relevant now than ever, especially with young people. I feel like even them, like they're attached to their phones, looking at screens.
They are. I mean, it's really, I mean, you can't see people's faces anymore. It's like they're, as you say, they're down here. So it's hard for them. But yeah, that's what I would recommend.
That's great advice. And it kind of ties back to the Seinfeld episode, like, Jerry went back to your office because he wanted to talk to you in person to tell you the news about the insurance fraud and all that. I mean, what a silly episode this was. Perfection of silliness, right? I mean, the Joe DiMaggio stuff. I mean,
I love that part.
Yeah, you must have had so much fun kind of on this set, outside of, well, obviously your scenes, but the Joe DiMaggio stuff, obviously Elaine. It could get sexual. That's why you should go with Raymond. The whole thing. I mean, you guys must have had a blast. You and Jeff Lester, kind of watching all this.
We did, and also the other actor who Bruno, the guy who played Roy, the dentist. I mean, it was like obviously all the guest stars all hang out together, right? So it's you just hi. He's also was great. I think I don't know if he's acting anymore. I think I heard that he became a therapist. Also fun and funny. We just the thing about doing those shows is that you think you're going to be in love forever with all those people, and then the week is over, and then if you're lucky, you see them again. But I did run into Ralph again many times because he would hike up in the same area that a friend of mine was hiking, and so I would see him, and Jeff as well. And Jason is very good friends with a good friend of mine, Gina Hecht. Has she been on the show?
Gina Hecht, yeah.
Yes, Gina was on the show. Yes.
Okay, great.
We talked to Gina. Yeah.
Great. I've directed her. She's wonderful, and so that they're best friends.
Yep.
Her and Jason are close.
Yeah. So I've seen Jason, and he's directed some things that have been really great. And I think is he doing Fiddler on the Roof? Is that what I heard? Fiddler
I think so. Yeah.
Directing, right? Yeah, I think he's directing.
Oh, he's directing.
Maybe I don't know. I just
he'd be great in it.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe he's in it too.
But yes. So going back to the episode, yes, it was. How do you say? Controlled silliness the whole time.
Yeah.
And we knew how lucky we were without knowing how lucky we were. You know what I mean? Like there was a sense of, as you were saying early on, that it's the first episode of the third season and that it got picked up. So we kind of knew that it was exciting for them and for us to be part of that.
Yeah, we had talked to a couple of writers who were on the show early on, and they gave that same vibe. You just talked about that they knew what they didn't really know what they were doing as far as They weren't polished, sitcom people, but they knew how to do it their way. As Chris mentioned, it's very homegrown and they did it their own way. And I think that shows that they didn't put any airs, that they invited everyone in, that you were all welcomed, which shows on the screen as well. Right. So, because if you're happy on set, you're going to perform better, obviously. So I think they knew that in some capacity, which is great. But yeah, I mean, as Chris mentioned, the episode is just so good. I have a crazy question. I'm sure, what was this? How long ago? This is 30 something years, probably 30 years ago, the episode. But do you happen to remember who played Joe DiMaggio? They just show the half of his body with the suit on.
I never saw. I think that was I don't know who played him. I mean, but he wasn't there when we were there.
Yeah.
I bet it was one of the writers putting on a suit.
Thinking that too. They just threw some. Maybe it was even Larry David for all we know. So I was wondering maybe if it was something like that. It could have been.
Yeah. But I love that whole part, that whole storyline, because it shows, and that he actually shows up at the end, because it shows the craziness of the character of Michael Ritchie's character, but also everybody. They're acting their whole when they're in the coffee shop at the end, and they see him and their response, and then Michael doing this. You could tell that they're just about to burst out laughing, right? I mean, at least Julie Louise, you could tell that she's like trying not to laugh, as she's trying not to laugh, though the character is kind of laughing, right? Because it's funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant, funny.
And I've read that DiMaggio is actually fond of this episode. Believe it or not, he was, a disgruntled. He was angry at a lot of things, but he did like this Seinfeld episode. So that's always good to hear as well. So fun stuff. Julianna, I mean, geez, I don't live around here, I mean, your delivery was just memorable to say the least.
Thank you.
We can't thank you enough for spending some time with us tonight and taking a trip down memory lane. I mean, the note, like I said, it kicked off season 3, which for my money is probably the best season of the run. So you have a lot to be proud of. And, our fans are going to love this.
I'm so delighted. You guys have been so great. I can't tell you. What's also funny is the people from Beauty and the Beast have contacted me. So it's kind of like my past is showing up. Okay. Yeah, they're doing some they do these conventions and stuff, and they have an on-zine. I played Jenny Aronson in that. So They asked me to write something for it.
Was Tori Pallone in that with you?
That is a very familiar name.
Yeah, she was another
She was in an early episode.
Seinfeld guest star early. I think she did a little bit with Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, so yeah, Seinfeld, Beauty and the Beast, Matlock, and all. It's all
There's
full
so many
circle.
connections.
Right?
Everyone's like,
It must be so interesting for you guys.
It really
right?
is. It
You
blows my
see-
mind every time. Yeah, we
Yeah.
talk to people. They're like, "Oh, I knew this person from that, or this person from that," and even outside of acting, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I went to the same dentist as Jason Alexander or something like that," because it's all you all live kind of in the same area. You're coworkers, and we love these connections. Especially the Matlock connections always come up because it was around that time, and it's always so much fun to hear these stories. Again,
you guys are ever in Santa Monica, LA, please contact me. I would love to take you out for coffee. You guys really are beautiful. So I really appreciate you reaching out
thank
to
you
me.
so much,
Seriously.
Terri.
So sweet, Terri, and best of luck with everything, and continue success. And we'll get that book out to everybody as well.
Great. Thank you. And thank you
Thank you, Terri.
for everything. Okay. Take good care, guys.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Cheers, Terri.
Thank you.